Okay, so this is the next episode in my second book of the series, Life Beyond Silence. The second book is called Losing Touch with Reality, and it's continuing to tell my story. The first book I did a podcast of that recently finished. It was called Not a Victim, or it is called Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. It's the first book in my series, Life Beyond Silence. And the book is also available in paperback and ebook form on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and some others. But I did the podcast, or started doing the podcast, because to I wanted to reach out to my listeners, to the people that read my book, or are listening to me on the podcast, and give them an avenue in which they could comment or ask questions, and then I could respond. And I will do my very best to do that in a timely manner. I also wanted to do the podcast because it's a different avenue than I'm used to. As you can probably tell, I'm definitely not used to podcasting. And I'm trying to do this all on my own, to be honest. Um, I started doing YouTube a while back. My son is grown, and he was like, I don't think you're going to do too well. But I'm actually doing pretty good. I just need subscribers. And doing YouTube channels are challenging. At least for me, I'm in my 60s now, so yeah, it's been a long journey. But I wrote the books a long time ago, so the podcasts kind of give me a different avenue in which to express myself. And I feel like I can add to the books and just talk. And so I hope you enjoy listening. Let's get back to the episode. So, in the previous episode, I said my middle daughter had come back to live with me, and we were in Alabama, and I was doing pretty good as far as money. We were still struggling, but we were doing okay. And Phil was still with us, and he was one minute we argued, the next minute we didn't. So, to be honest, like I said, I really didn't know that we were having that much problem. I really didn't. But I do remember things now, and I remembered them after we were no longer together. That, sorry for the spoiler, but I did remember that he kept telling me I was crazy, I was imagining things, but yet there would be other times that he would say, like there was this girl at his work that was like, I guess, a secretary or office person, but he worked at a paintball thing, and he was a manager of the paintball place. So he enjoyed doing what he was doing, and he was always out on the fields, and he was a diver, and I just, I guess I just didn't really get it. I mean, I knew what he did, and I knew what paintball was, and I'd helped him on like paintball books and articles and things like that that he needed to write up. But I, he told me this girl that worked there, her and her husband had never had kids. But she had said the reason we argued is because, kind of like that book, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, something like that. And that he was an alpha and I was an alpha, and two alpha personalities can't be together. There has to be an alpha and a submissive. And I made the comment, and I still would, even to this day, yes, I am an alpha. But it's not that easy being walked on for so long. And remember, I had been in a domestic violence situation years earlier and had stood up for myself finally and had survived. And when you're in a domestic violence relationship and you get out, you can see problems as they're coming, and you're not going to be a victim anymore. So you put your guard up. And if that makes me an alpha, I guess it does. But every time there would be a problem, I would voice my concern. I would try to stand up for myself. And Phil never hit me. He never did. But he would argue back. And his way of, I guess you would say, abuse was to tell me that I was crazy. And that, I was always bitching and always thinking things in my head that weren't true. And come to find out, I was probably more right than wrong. So I give advice to people now that when their gut tells them, that seems weird, that he went to work and went the opposite direction, or that he dressed up a little bit more going to something with the buddies than he normally would, or he's wearing cologne but yet he's going to play ball. It just, if something doesn't seem right and you're asking questions and they tell you you're acting crazy and you're making this up in your head, maybe there's more to the story than you should discard. Because every time I discarded things, when he would say, honey, I love you, I would never do anything, I don't know why you keep thinking that I would, it's like you're trying to make me do something, or you're trying to find something that's not there. I look back at it now and think, yeah, that was all a smokescreen, and he did a very good job of it. But there was one time, I tell my kids about it, but there was this one time where I saw his vehicle still in the parking lot because we lived in an apartment house. And I thought, that's weird. He left like a little bit ago. Why would his vehicle still be out there? So I kind of walked out, and I was still kind of like in my head thinking, maybe somebody picked him up. And I was walking towards this vehicle, and all of a sudden I see him crawling out of the back seat. And I'm like, what the hell? And he was dressed, like, to the nines. He had cologne on. He was dressed like he was going out with a woman. He wasn't dressed like he was going to chit-chat with the buddies at the paintball field or even anywhere else. Because most of the time if he went out with the boys, or went to a meeting or whatever, he was like dressed down, just relaxed dressing. And when he crawled out and stood up and was adjusting himself, I walked up to him and he was like, oh, hey. And then he just immediately went into smokescreen mode and told me, well, I didn't want to get dressed up inside because you'll read into it. But this is pretty important. We've got a lot of things to talk about. I just thought it'd make me feel better to get dressed up. And we're going to go to like a wings place and sports bar, so I wanted to look nice. Nothing wrong with looking nice. And I just remember I started crying right in the parking lot. I just started crying. And he's like, you're doing it again. Don't let your thoughts run away with you. You're just, you're so emotional. And he put his arm around me and gave me a kiss. Told me I was just trying to like find something that wasn't there. Anyway, the point is, all of this happened, and I don't know how long it went on, but we didn't really live in that apartment complex. I think I had just signed my second year lease, and here I was going through this. And I remember it wasn't too long after that I was at work one day, and Phil called me and he said, what are we having for dinner tonight? Which wasn't really unusual that he asked me what are we having for dinner or what time was I going to be home. That wasn't really unusual, but at that time, I guess I thought, I don't know, I just remember having cold chills, and I remember thinking in my head that it was kind of weird. But I shrugged it off, like I do most things, or did most things. And there's a lot more to tell later on, but let's continue. So I told him I thought I would make meatloaf, and I would be home somewhere around 6. And he was like, okay. Well, I'll talk to you later, honey. I love you. And I said, I love you. And usually after I got off work, I ran and picked up the kids wherever they were. And then I would stop and pick up maybe groceries. And then I would get home. So when I got home, which was right around 6, the kids, my oldest, or not my oldest, my middle daughter was working or doing something. She was already driving, and she wasn't there at that moment. And my son, who was like 9 years old, ran in. He probably ran in to get his skateboard or something. But anyway, he ran in, and then my youngest daughter, who was kind of like in her preteen years, she came in, and I remember putting my stuff down, and I remember I didn't notice anything at first, but I kind of just took notice that it didn't look like Bill was there. And which isn't really unusual either. But I remember I was walking to the back where our master bathroom and bedroom was, and I saw his armoire open, and years ago, basically, you would call it a shift robe, but I didn't know if you'd know what that is. But to me, it was a shift robe. You could call it an armoire, but it was a nicely made cabinet that had was made for hanging up clothes in. And usually he packed all his paintball stuff in there. And so anyway, I was walking back and I saw that, and it was open, and there was nothing in it. And there was, to me, it looked very telling. Anyway, like I said, I came home. I didn't notice anything right away. Then when I did notice that everything had been taken out of the back room, his clothes, his paintball stuff, there was hangers in the floor, I walked back into the living room and looked around because I was confused. And even though I had just seen how empty the back room was, I was like in a state of shock, I guess. And I looked around in the living room area, dining room area, and there was no stereo equipment. It was gone. All the CDs were gone. Things that he would have wanted were gone. Even some photo albums. And I hadn't realized it when I first walked in. I hadn't noticed it. But there, against the wall where it used to sit, was empty. And I just remember I yelled at the kids who didn't know at that moment what was going on. And I said, "Get in the car." And we jumped in the car and we drove I drove as fast as I could, just down the road where the paintball park was. It had fields for paintball, and then it had an office building that was like a store front thing, and then there was diving in the back. And I drove as fast as I could up there because that's where he would have been. And the girl that was there was the one that he'd always talked about. And she was married, and I didn't think anything. I was clueless. But I walked in, I was crying. I said, "Do you know where he's at?" And she's like, "No, he said he was leaving for the day, and I don't know anything. I'm so sorry. I wish there was something I could do." Just as calmly and sweet as she could be. And looking back, if I had only known, I would have literally probably at that very moment had so much adrenaline going through me. It's a good thing I didn't know, because I used to be a wild child, remember? So literally I think I would have pounced on her if I knew that she knew where he was, and that she knew what was going on, and she was playing this innocent. And I was losing it. Well, I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know. So, to me, it was like I was completely lost and been played a fool. He planned this. He planned to do it this way. Nobody just does it on the spur of the moment. He literally had planned to do it this way because he knew what kind of time I usually got home. He'd called to confirm what time I was going to get home. He'd been acting completely normal. He'd been having sex with me. He'd been kissing me. He'd been talking to me, and everything had been perfectly normal. And there, out of the blue, he had done this. And her name is Jennifer, had literally thrown this innocent act on me when she knew damn well where he was. And she knew damn well what was going on. And she could have told me. Or basically, because she's a woman and she knew he had a family and was married. Yes, we had gotten a divorce. That's true. But he had cost me my oldest daughter. He had done things that I wasn't out there spreading around. Oh, by the way, you shouldn't hire this person because he jacked off in a Kmart parking lot. Or you shouldn't hire this person because he attacked a woman at one time. I didn't say that to anyone. These were secrets, and we were in Alabama, and we were trying to live normal lives. And I just felt like a fool. I took the kids, I went back home. Of course, I was a basket case. And for almost 2 solid weeks, I had no idea where he was. But I was sending out emails to every paintball person that I knew. I was asking questions. I was leaving messages. I even called the police and did a missing person. Because, yeah, he had left. And the police said, well, you can get him on abandonment. And I was like, well, that's fine. Do that. I was just torn to pieces. Because there again, my life is going normal, kind of. I mean, yeah, we fought. We had arguments, but we didn't physically fight. We had arguments. Normal marriage type arguments. Well, I won't say that necessarily. I would say we had arguments because I thought he was cheating on me. Which he just proved he was cheating on me. Anyway, I was a basket case. I called off work a couple days. I was trying my best to pay the bills, and I was scared. Here's my life crashing in. Now I gotta call my family. Now I gotta admit how fucked up I had made life again. For my children, for me. What the hell? Like, what the hell? And at the time, I knew that would only give my mother and the people around my mother reason to say, there she goes again. Now she's got to come running home with her head between her legs, saying, help me, help me. I have 3 children and nowhere to live. And I didn't want to do that. Not like that. I did not want to do that. And I thought, well, if I could just coax him out of the shadows, maybe there's a chance we can fix this. And to be honest, I think when you're married and you're in a relationship that is toxic, I loved him. I loved him with all my heart. Just think of all the things I had done up until now. And I loved him. And at this time in my life, I was broken, and I thought, we can still fix this. I don't know what's going on. If he is cheating, if he is with a woman, Maybe it'll happen like it happened before. Maybe he'll tell me, okay, I'll give it another chance. I would have done anything just to speak to him at that very moment. Anyway, so yeah, I was just hoping that he would call. And I was making phone calls and putting out the word that he was not home, and I was worried about him. I was doing anything I could to get him to come out of the woodwork. Well, one of his friends, his paintball buddies, called me and asked if he could come over, and I didn't even know the guy. Like, but I have so much respect for him. And to this day, I can't even remember his name. I was so distraught when he showed up at my apartment, and I thought, well, maybe he's coming by to tell me where he's at. And he said, look, I know that he left. I don't know where he's at, but I came here to try to help. He said, I can't imagine a person that would leave their wife and children and take everything they have and just walk out. I used to really get along with your husband, but he said, I can't even imagine what you're going through. And I was crying. Like I was breaking apart. And to this day, I kind of remember what he looks like, but I don't remember his name. But he handed me $1,000. And he said, I hope this helps a little bit. I just would want somebody to do this for my wife if she had ever been in a relation. He said, I would never do it. But he said, I just don't know what else to do to help you. He said, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And I remember, I think I asked him some questions, but I don't remember if he had the answers or not. He just told me that he felt sorry for me and that he would never do that himself. And he thought this was the best thing he could do to help. And I just remember how much I truly appreciated it. And to this day, if I knew who he was, if I remembered his name, and maybe, God Himself just sent him to me. I don't know. But he was a godsend to me. He literally came at the right time because I needed to get my rent paid. I needed to continue paying bills. I was still hopeful that Phil would come back. I was at a loss, just a complete loss. And he showed up at the right time. So then, after that, I knew I had to go back to work. I went back to work. Of course, I met with my bosses, who were the owners of the nursing home conglomerate. And the husband was very much the same type of person. He looked at me. I was crying. He said, I can't even imagine what it must be like for you right at this moment. I would never have done this to my family. He said, let me give you $1,500 above and beyond your normal pay. He said, maybe that will help you a little bit. I hope it does. He said, if you need things, just let me know. He said, I just don't even know what to say. And I remember being blown away by him. And yes, I do have his name. and everything, but you gotta understand, at the time, I was fixing to turn 40 maybe, and like I was 39, I think, and then they were in their like 60s, 70s, 60s, I think. And by the time I got myself together, which took a long time, there was no way for me to contact them. Um, anyway, the point is, I really appreciated the help that I got. And for anybody going through something similar, you'll be surprised at how strong you are, and you'll also be surprised at how many people will help you. People you don't even know will come out of the woodwork and help you. Nobody wants to see somebody broken. Nobody wants to see children that are going through something painful. I was blessed to have them help me. Very, very blessed. That was two people that had just opened their pocketbooks and helped me, because they knew that my husband had just walked out without a word. Literally took what he wanted and walked out. And me and the children had gone home to find him completely gone. So just remember, if you're going through hardships, no matter what they are, domestic violence, um, even cheating like I was, just remember that if things like this happen to you, you will be surprised at how many people are willing to help you when you are literally at your lowest point. Anyway, the point is, I was caught off guard by all of it, and I was still trying to find him. And as I previously said, it took about 2 weeks, and I got a phone call from him. And I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm somewhere that you are not going to know where." He said, "I took off work. I made plans to do this." He said, "I just don't want to be with you anymore." And I said, "What in the world?" And I started begging. I was crying. I told him, "All the promises you told me, what about that? What about all the promises that you would never hurt me?" And then I'll just give you a piece of advice. If you're in a type of relationship like I was, where somebody does things the way that Phil did, yeah, I should have never gone to even Louisiana. That's a given. But after all those years, like almost 10 years, or right at 10 years of being with him, even through the divorce and everything, I'm still with him. And here's this man who has begged me on his knees to forgive him, has told me that I was his soulmate, has told me that he knows what he cost me and that he would never hurt me again. All the things he had said, they just went out the window. And my piece of advice is, if your gut tells you that the person you're with is, I guess you would call him a user, somebody that goes about their life doing things that are unimaginable, like cheating, and lying and calling you crazy and not giving you, I can't say he never gave me help, because of course, he gave me money, but I can say his lies and his dodging, he would like tell you one thing and do another. I was I was being used. I was being walked on. He was cheating behind my back. And I don't care how he wants to put it. And even to this day, with my son, his son, he tells him, oh, I couldn't be with her anymore because she was being a bitch and I couldn't take the arguing and whatever. He tells him complete lies. Yeah, we fought and argued about things, but it was his cheating and his underhanded dodging here, dodging there, keeping me in, giving me a smoke screen every chance he got. That was what made us fall apart. But it doesn't even matter, because you can have a marriage that falls apart. I've had them before. You're just supposed to say, I'm done. You're just supposed to be a man and say, I'm leaving you. Let's discuss how we're going to separate, how we're going to be done. And then I could have begged. He could have said it doesn't matter. But he could have been there to give me his money, to help me move, to help me make a plan. He didn't have to leave the house empty of all his things and for us not to know what was going on. He didn't have to do that. He could have just accepted that he needed to sit down with me. He said the reason why he did the way he did is because he didn't want to listen to me crying. He didn't want to listen to me begging and crying and everything. Well, unfortunately, that's what happens when you're leaving a marriage. One person may not want it, and they may beg and cry. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at this point right now. I just wanted you to know how heartbroken I was when he called and how I didn't know what to do.